This division's, it's physical. And so that's the currency in the division. And so I love the fact that this defense, I think it's one of the most important units in the division. The point is, like, there's not a lot on this team right now that I'm saying is prohibitive of them making the playoffs. And I'm sure Saleh and the fact they went and got him is like, hey, we're going to rescue you, man. And it's not going to be like, hey, you're going to come here and have to reinvent the wheel. Just get back to doing what you were doing. This team, you go as far as Stafford's back takes him. Maybe he needs a new mattress. Welcome to the Green Light Podcast presented by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code GREENLIGHT and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code GREENLIGHT. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. If that bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just make sure you use bonus code GREENLIGHT when you sign up. All right, so as we turn our attention to the NFC West, I can take this Post-it note off of my laptop, which says "Go Falcons," to reveal the score of that one Super Bowl.
That was really good, notice. Really good,
awareness.
Situational awareness.
Yeah, thank you.
It was something,
Add awareness is high with you.
Yeah, thank you. We had a great visit to Atlanta to see the Falcons. Went to practice. We interviewed Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Raheem Morris. We got to see some of the draft picks up close. James Pierce, impressive looking dude. Trice was pretty impressive looking, physically.
Yep.
And Raheem brought him up without even being prompted. So.
Yep.
We also saw the kid Walker from Georgia. Just fun, man. Fun to meet Drake London in person. What a great dude. Bijan Robinson. Damn, sorry, Bijan. Just could have talked to him for 3 hours. He's just a bro, dude. That guy's a bro. He's a bro, dude.
I mean, everybody in that building, we didn't meet a bad guy all day.
No.
Just awesome people there at the Atlanta Falcons.
No. And the good luck continued as we went to Magic City, which is one of the most respected gentlemen's clubs in the entire nation. It's iconic. Everybody knows Magic City. And it was Monday. We went to Magic City Mondays. We hit the day shift.
We got there at 2:15, opened at 3. Hanging out in the parking lot beforehand.
Yeah, we were sitting in the parking lot like people that like hang out outside a stadium tailgating, except we had no food. We were there for the food.
Right.
We were there for the famous wings.
We went inside and beeline directly to the kitchen.
Well, y'all went inside and
Yes.
beeline directly to the kitchen. I'd said I didn't want to get Lloyd Howard in there.
Yep.
And so, I sat out in the parking lot, and these guys came out with like 200 wings, 150 wings, 150
yep.
wings. We ate them on the tailgate of our rental car, and at one point there was a boneyard that was like 5 inches tall, sitting behind the back left tire of that expedition, and we were slumped against a merchandise trailer, in the corner, and strippers were pulling up and pulling. I saw one stripper pull past our little boneyard and look at like the situation that we created in the parking lot, and like the look of disgust was like, who the fuck are these people? Like at first we looked like the police, when we didn't have any food, and then they were like, I don't even know what to think about these guys. Like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, usually when people come for the wings, they eat inside. But we were out there in the 85-degree weather, sweating our asses off. We had the meat sweats.
It was rough.
We were defeated, bro. I didn't eat dinner. I ate at 3:15. We traveled home. I didn't eat dinner.
Yeah. A few of us had multiple ice creams at TGI Fridays at the airport.
Yeah, dude.
Shortly after.
By the way, the Atlanta airport, there's a TGI Fridays in there. Get your shit together.
Concourse B.
It smells like vomit in the front of the TGI Fridays. The place was also packed which tells me that people just don't care when they're in airports. If I'd have walked into that TGI Fridays and been like, is this America? I would have been like, probably not. Like,
Yeah.
the veil between us being a developing country and the United States of America that we know seems a lot thinner after spending time in that TGI Fridays in the Atlanta airport. I mean, that was some like, where am I?
Separated by one stinky TGI Fridays.
That was disgusting. And y'all picked it. And when I walked in, Reed was on his second cookie and ice cream. And Tanner was on his 14th Red Bull vodka and Miller Lite combination.
I needed a pick-me-up.
Yeah, well, you got that pick-me-up. So we walked probably 5 miles in that airport, tried to work the lemon pepper wings off. But that's the point, is the lemon pepper wings at Magic City are as advertised. It took about 16 hours for the Lemon Pepper Express to show up this morning. I hear the train coming. It's rolling around the bend. But yeah, it was just a wonderful visit, and it was cool because where we were posted up, like I said, the strippers were pulling up, and it was basically like their NBA walk-in kind of area. Like seriously, it was like we got to watch them all walk into work. You know what I'm saying?
I wish we thought ahead and brought like a little stereo system so we could do some like announcements.
Yes.
On poll number 1 from South Carolina.
Linda from Marietta heading to the stage. And another thing is there was another gentleman's club, and I'm going to get to the NFC West in a second, but we had a fun trip. What's the other gentleman's club called?
Pooties?
Pooties? What? Pooties is what you did Pooties is what you did in Magic City.
In the bathroom.
Reed desecrated Magic City.
And I will say it was elite awareness by me. You talk about awareness. I went there right after they cleaned it.
Yeah.
It was open, 3 p.m. I was the first one in there.
Yeah.
I know it's
You got a clean bathroom. What was the other strip club called? Does anybody know?
Chad Johnson's?
No, the one yesterday where – so you guys told me that there's a strip club in Atlanta where there's this lady that's been working there a long time. She's like I'm trying to think. She's like Jason Peters. She's in it for the love of the game. She's been in it like two plus decades.
The
Claremont Lounge.
Claremont Lounge. And supposedly there's this force of nature in there that she has a party trick that's like world famous where she puts an empty beer can. Is it an empty beer can? I hope it's an empty beer can.
Well, that wasn't specified.
So she puts a beer can of some sort on the table, and she just I don't know how to say this. It's titties off the top rope. She picks them up and then just lets them go, and they crush the beer can. She just smashes beer cans with her bosom. And it's like a huge party trick there. It's like world famous, and we wanted to see it in person. So
her name is Anita Ray Strange, better known by her stage name Blondie.
Yeah, Blondie, you're ducking us. We were trying to get some content. I don't believe it.
She has been a dancer at the Claremont Lounge since 1979.
That's incredible. She's been crushing
Longevity
beer cans
is
for
insane.
Making recycling a little bit easier since 1979. Hey, honestly, I looked it up. It takes like 90 to 120 psi to crush a beer can like that. I mean, her cans. All right. So, anyways, you're ducking us. Next time we want to come down and do some content with you, please pick up the phone. We'll bring you. I want to bring like a bunch of household items to see how they stand up. You know what I'm saying?
You like 2 years ago, you wanted to bring a crusher into this studio.
A hydraulic crusher. Maybe we just have her.
Turns out we don't even need one.
We'll fly her in.
Yep.
Honestly, though, like that's one of those situations where they're like, Linda, we need you in the back right of the plane for balance, dude. So, anyways, that's strip club talk. Now let's get to the NFC West. How do we make a hard right turn into the NFC West? You know who's played almost as long as Linda is Matt Stafford.
Yep.
So Matt Stafford is 37 years old, and I'm gonna start with the LA Rams, because the LA Rams won the division last year, and what I'm doing in these previews is I'm ordering them in the order of the teams that won the division, the standings of the division. So nobody's like, why didn't you start with my team? It's slotted. And I'm not going to make, as I said in the beginning of both of these previews that I've already done, the South and the East and the NFC. Go back and check those out if you haven't. If you have a team you're interested in those divisions, or you want to educate yourself on the lay of the land this year, go check them out. But I'm not going to make any determinations on who's going to win the division. That's for the grand finale August show. Okay? But we'll start with the Rams. I think everything hinges on Stafford's health. And when you hear the guy is 37 and he's already had an epidural in camp, that's not something that necessarily excites you about the prospect of them getting his best ball. But it feels like every year we say this. We say this could be Stafford's last run. You know, when is the ledge? You hear this with quarterbacks all the time, and players in general, is like you don't know where the ledge is. And that ledge, of course, I'm talking about is it's where they don't play as well. And all of a sudden their age starts to show. And I think probably akin to the way we age as human beings, where, like, you know, if you're 80 years old, one little thing compounds a little bit more. When you're 37 in the NFL, one little thing does compound a little bit more. But this is not a little thing. It's a big thing. It's the back. He's been dealing with it. And, you know, an epidural is not a good sign. That's usually when you say you got a disc problem and you're trying to get through it, right? And I don't want to make too much or too little of it because I don't know the extent of the injury, but let's do this preview as if he's healthy. If he's healthy, I think they're the Rams that we know, right? They're an imperfect team. They're certainly not like one of the best teams on paper in the NFL, the best like 3 or 4 teams on paper in the NFL. I wouldn't argue that necessarily. Like the rosters of the Eagles or the Ravens or teams like that, they're stacked. This isn't like a stacked roster. But knowing who they have on the headset and knowing who they have under center, I've learned covering this game since I played enough to know that the Rams are going to be in it in December and January if guys are healthy in those programs. And to me, that's the question. I think this is one of those teams that if you look at last year, at times they squeaked by people late. Like their offense didn't look spectacular. They couldn't stop the run at times, you know. But all that culminated in being a play or two away from maybe beating the Eagles. And the Eagles didn't let anybody get close the last 3 weeks of their season, right? Like, of course, including the bye week before the Super Bowl. But, you know, they beat the brakes off the Commanders, and it culminated in just a dominating performance that, like, you know, where Kansas City was out of the game in the second quarter. And so when you think about like a West Coast team in the snow in Philly, playing that defense, playing that rushing attack, still giving up some explosive runs along the way, you know, nothing perfect about that effort, but it ends 28-22. And the Rams have the ball with a chance to go up late in the game. And so for all their flaws, and they had flaws last year, they're knocking at the door. And so when I think about this team, like, well, I might not pick them to win the division. I don't know yet. You know, I'm going to play coy on that. They're always going to be in it. And they are, a team to be reckoned with. They're another one of these programs. You talk about the Bucs. They're programmatic in their approach. And it changes from time to time. They used to be like, fuck them picks. You know, this is an interesting year because they got a lot of draft picks, but I don't know that any of their draft picks are going to have to play a big role, which tells me this is a year that they see as one of maybe the last opportunities to do this thing, right? Like these draft picks they're gonna bear fruit in the next chapter, whenever that next chapter begins, and maybe somebody has to play because somebody gets hurt this year. But it's not one of these draft classes where, like, in San Francisco, who we're going to talk about in a bit, like, we need Mykal Williams to play well. Or we need, West to play well, or one of these guys up front, or it's not like Hairston in Buffalo at corner, or an edge rusher in Atlanta. These guys can sit and be developed, but everything has to go right for this team from a health standpoint. Now, I'll explain that. Like, Stafford's 37, Devontae Adams is 33. He's your big free agency signing. Now, he's not a guy who's had to miss a bunch of time or anything, but if you can get year one Vegas Devontae Adams, which isn't that long ago, like, you're getting a lot out of that. And they have, at a high clip, brought in kind of these star vets, guys who maybe aren't what they once were, but they're at a point in their career where they're trying to win a ring or what have you, and Von Millers of the world, Odell Beckham's, Bobby Wagner's. Devontae Adams could be one of those guys, man. So, at tight end, you've got Higbee, you've got, Allen, those guys, but the Ferguson kid might be the most athletic guy they've had in a little while at tight end. That's at least what they hope. They moved back in the first round, snagged him. He's buried in depth right now. I think he's had an injury, but I bet you just reading the tea leaves that eventually he's gonna play for them, and he's gonna be an important player for them at some point in the season. Tutu Atwell is going to be an important kind of player. Can he be a number 3 for them? Robinson left and went to San Francisco. He's dealing with a suspension, but Robinson was big for them. I think he caught like 7 touchdowns last year. Like, he had a lot of big catches. There's going to be moments where Tutu Atwell has to play big, and obviously we love Puka Nacua, friend of the program, so he's one of those guys I don't worry about. But you can see it, 1, 2, 3 in some order. I think Puka at this stage in his career could be considered the number 1, right? Devontae Adams and Tutu Atwell rounding out a group that's Tyler Higbee off an injury, depth, Ferguson, 2 good backs and Kyron Williams and Corum. Use a 4 on Hunter out of Auburn. So one thing we know about this team is they're going to run the football, and play action is going to be a part of the deal. And the screen game is going to be a part of the deal. Like, I think Devontae Adams is going to help in the screen game as well. This is a team, I already painted the picture of kind of who they are, how they build as the year goes, which to me is like it's a calling card of a good head coach and good assistant coaches where you're developing players as the year goes on. They started slow last year, had some injuries, really picked it up. But even towards the end of last year, and just like the grain of salt, the offense wasn't setting the world on fire late in the regular season. I mean, there were a lot of games that they were winning, 15-13 or whatever it was, which I guess shows you could say, hey, if you're a Rams fan, that shows that we're gutsy. We can win these close, low-scoring games. We don't have to win every game 30-28. They can do that too. But I will say this, they're not like a juggernaut. I don't look at the Rams as one of these juggernaut teams. They're a team they're the classic nobody wants to play them in December and January team. It doesn't mean that they're going to be the 1 seed in the NFC, but I like the offensive line. Jonah Jackson, they sent him to Chicago. Shelton comes back, he's going to play center for them, which he did in Chicago last year. Havenstein, I played against Havenstein. That's how long he's been there. I mean, he's ancient, but he's a steady presence in that room. Avila will stay home at left guard. Dotson, who had the really cool haircut in training camp, he's going to play right guard for you. And Alaric Jackson, who's dealing with blood clots in his leg, had that in 2022. They really want him back for the opener, but they did bring in DJ Humphries, who, if you remember, showed up last year in, I think, Kansas City and got hurt immediately. So nothing is set in stone, when it comes to assuming the depth is going to be there for this team at tackle. You got to have your tackle stay healthy, especially with the age and the lack of mobility that your quarterback has. We saw Lampkin, this kid from UNC who plays with no gloves. He's a bona fide short king. He was out there
5'11", 290.
5'11", 290. And he was out there. He had 4 pancake blocks in the preseason game. I don't know what that means. This is the first preseason game. But I like seeing it. And Limmer played a lot of snaps for them on the interior last year. So they have some depth. They have some young, exciting players who are at least making, week 3 training camp news, right? Look at that little joker moving furniture. He's got great leverage.
Wow, spin move.
Yeah.
Spin move as a center. Boink.
Yeah, spin move. Pretty wild. Spin off the shade.
I have never seen that.
Spin off the 2-eye and go get the backer. That's pretty slick.
Any difference, anything like harder when you go against or easier, a guy who's 5'11", 290 versus a 6'4" center, like in terms of
sure. I mean, it's the leverage, just getting underneath these guys. That's why you don't see a bunch of 6'5" centers, but 5'11" is pretty sawed off. Like in the NFL, like that's even pretty short for an offensive line, offensive lineman. So it's one of those things where I don't know how his arm length is, and a lot of times guys inside can overcome having those sawed off bills. It's when you get outside that you worry about it. And I don't know if this guy's going to play any snaps for them this year. We're making a big deal about the fact the guy's 5'11", wears no gloves. He's a rookie. He's out there pancaking people. But
31 and a half arm length.
Yeah.
That's short.
Yeah, that's T-Rex.
Short. And like in the scouting world, typically the we'll say 32 inches is like your
that's the ledge.
Fatal line.
Yeah.
So that's short. But to Chris's point, if you have elite hand usage, you can compensate for it.
Now, somebody's got to help him get the canned corn in aisle 3. Like it's definitely a problem for him in other areas of his life, but maybe it's not on the football field. We'll see. I just think that I think the Rams offensively, you kind of know what you're going to get. So I'm sorry if there's nothing revelatory I'm saying in this breakdown. It's how do the new pieces fit in, and how do they get back to doing what they do best? And Matt Stafford's health. That's a lot of it. Now defensively, a lot has been made about this pass rush group up front, and I think the young pass rush group they have is exciting. It's one of the best fronts in football when it comes to rushing for. At least that's what they were by the end of last season. A lot of people make a big deal about Jared Verse. Fiske was fantastic last year. I mean, to have over 8 sacks is a rookie period, but to do it from the interior, he has a great feel for rushing the passer. He has a great feel for games. Him and Verse rushed together well. Surprise, surprise. I mean, like they played together in college. And of course, we like Young and we like Turner. They bring in Poona Ford to help stop the run. And that's where the rubber meets the road for them, in my opinion, is like what good is being an elite defensive front if you can't get to third down where you can take advantage of your pass rush ability. And not to rain on the parade, but you do have to stop the run to be an elite defense. And so while this group's a lot of fun right now, until they stop the run, it's just not a complete package you're looking at. And Chris Shula has done a really nice job. We had him on the show. We like him. Sure, Micah Parsons and Aaron Donald are talking about, hey, what if there's an edit with Micah Parsons in a Rams uniform, and Aaron's like, well, maybe I could get in the gym and be out there in a couple weeks if Micah Parsons was a Ram. I'm sure the young guys are like, don't do it. Like, this is my turn. It's my turn now, Aaron. Can I have a turn? And frankly, I think they have enough rushing the passer. I think the big question to me is, can you stop the run? Can you get to third down? Linebacker, it's a fairly clear picture. Landman, Reeder, Spates, like some combination of those guys. Spates was an undrafted guy, played big for them. At least got a lot of experience last year and flashed. Reeder, Landman, the guys that know the system. Chris Paul Jr. is a guy that intrigues me out of Ole Miss. He's got an athletic build.
It's incredible where he's come from since his days on the State Farm commercial.
No question. No, and I wanted to clear that up. It's not, for people at home that might be taking you too deadpan. He's no relation to Chris Paul. Russillo really likes this guy, but So I don't know that it's a spectacular linebacker room, and I don't think it's like a spectacular back end. I like Cam Curl. He came in and played really well last year at a good value from Washington. And Lake. I mean, Quentin Lake, Chris Shula talked about his versatility, brings a physical element, good tackler, plays nickel, but you got two 30-plus-year-old corners. So, on its head. Like if Darius Williams and Witherspoon play, that's an okay group, right? But there is the problem in the NFL that always rears its ugly head, which is corner depth. Durant factors in. I think Witherspoon is the guy he's competing with. Darius Williams seems to be the guy at corner that's penciled in. Mm-hmm. Witherspoon played big for him in some spots last year, especially late in the season, and so I think they probably look at Witherspoon as kind of a high floor guy, and maybe Durant's a little bit more of a wild card, but has some ability. So I don't know how that shakes out, but rush and coverage work together, right? And so I don't worry as much about the coverage end of that thing. It's certainly, if everybody stays healthy, they'll be okay. But it's the run game, man, because when you're playing teams in the NFC in today's day and age, when you're playing teams in your division, right? The Niners, they're going to run the football no matter who's back there, and they're going to do it well. I don't know if you noticed, and we'll talk about this in a second, but Seattle Seahawks, they're going to run the ball this year. And if you can get into the dance, you're going to have to play the Eagles at some point. And we know the challenges they bring. They know that well because last year it was Swiss cheese in a couple of those situations. And I mean no disrespect. Saquon Barkley, most of his explosive runs, it felt like they came in those Rams games, the most memorable ones. So that's the burning picture in Chris Shula's mind going into the offseason. Make no bones about it, because this team's aspirations are still to win a Super Bowl. And do that, and to get out of the NFC, you got to stop the run. Not to mention the Commanders ran the ball efficiently last year. So there's a lot of teams that run the football in the NFC. This problem doesn't just go away. They used to tell us, come in the building after we gave up, 150 or 200 on the rare occasion, and they'd say, hey, in the NFL, when you've got a problem, it doesn't just solve itself. People are going to keep coming back to it until you stop it. There's only one way. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to see them take that next step. Rams fans, you might think I'm making too big a deal about the run game, but it's still a big part of football. So this team can go as far as Stafford's back takes them, in my opinion. It's not an overcomplicated calculus for me. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark because I'm not a doctor and I'm not reading the MRIs. And I'm not waking up every morning. Maybe he needs a new mattress. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a little ironic that Tempur-Pedic's like, hey, or his wife needs to get her own mattress.
Exactly.
Respectfully. And that's been something that I've always said watching those commercials is like, I have a mattress on the floor.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't mind sleeping on the mattress on the floor.
You should try the floor.
Try the floor, dude. Yeah. Floor works really well.
Yeah.
I just don't like that whole, like, you're laying in bed and it's like, and you look over and your wife's like, I'm just not comfortable. And you're like, dude, I have 2 bulging discs. I just got an epidural. Like, this is not an ideal setup. So, anyway, shout out to Matt Stafford and his wonderful family. Getting the mattress bag. Maybe it's not the mattress. Second team we're going to talk about, Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks. I'm excited about this team. I mean, I'm not again making any predictions here, but I think the key to this team is the defense, right?
Yep.
I think that's their identity, and I think Mike McDonald seems like a guy who, if he can get the program to buy into a way of playing, and that means complementary football, means an identity, this team's going to be tough. And I also think this program is going to persist in Seattle for a little bit. Look at last year. And it's not all about the run game, but here we go. We come back to it. First 7 weeks of the season, they allowed almost 150 yards a game on the ground. That's 28th in the NFL. And that number dropped to 96.2 in the final 9 weeks of the season. They went from being, at best, like a middle-of-the-road defense, some of all the parts, to being probably a top 10 defense at the end of the season. I mean, they played like it at times, and the run game had a lot to do with it, right? And that had to really hurt McDonald to walk in and see, the lack of physicality, the fits being so bad early in the season. You couple that with an offense that really had no real identity. I guess the identity was we're going to throw the ball as much as we fucking can. They didn't have an identity of physicality, that's for sure. And I think it was clear to Coach McDonald what they had to accomplish over the next calendar year. And the most impressive part to me is they did it on the fly. Yep. You know, like that to me, you think about jumps from year 1 to year 2. How do you forecast a jump from year 1 to year 2 when the jump happens inside year 1? That's exciting, Seattle fans, 12s. So, and Ernest Jones was a big part of that. You know, we talked early and often about their linebacker play last year. Ernest Jones came in. He's a guy who bounced around within like a 6-month period, Tennessee, LA, Seattle, like his family's moving around, he's moving around. And then he got the bag, you know, because he was a big part of turning this group around. I also thought Leonard Williams, his addition was huge, right? So this group learned McDonald's system on the fly. And I think he learned the players on the fly. That's another thing. We always think about the players learning the system. You know, what's that take? Like, there's also like, can a coach maximize what he has? Can he, in the process of the first season, be like, well, that's not his strength. Let's use him in a different way. There are little tweaks that are made to the scheme to fit the players that sometimes we don't even see. And so I think it's a two-way street, and it's very encouraging if you're a Seattle fan. Listen, they gave up 228 to a Christian McCaffrey-less Niners team on the ground, and they went on that skid last year. And I think it's very fitting that they ended it against the Niners and turned the damn thing around. And they kind of gave the flu to the Niners because the Niners then went on a big skid. So in this division, it was when I played back in the day, when I walked to school uphill in the snow, every fucking team was physical in the NFC West. And it feels like that again, not to the same degree. You can't touch the Frank Gore Niners and the Marshawn Lynch-led Seahawks, the Tom Cable, the Legion of Boom, fucking Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Justin Smith, the Smith brothers. Those were the days, man. Even Arizona was pretty cagey, and those Rams would steal a couple games every year. This division's, it's physical, and so that's the currency in the division. And so I love the fact that this defense is I think it's one of the most important units in the division. I think it might be the defining side of the ball in the division. If they can be dominant, they have a differentiating thing about them when you look around this division, because there's a lot of question marks in the other places. And so I think, you know, at the risk of being too bullish on the defense, I think it's going to be good. DeMarcus Lawrence and Mafe together. You bring back Reed, Murphy, who is a guy that we really liked last year. He's going to make a jump. And they have that kind of matchup dependent flexibility in the secondary, because there's a lot of guys. Like, you start off, camp, and it looks like Woolen and Jobe at corner. Witherspoon can play nickel. We all know Witherspoon can do just about anything. And, you've got Love and Brian at safety, but Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, they really like him. And you put it this way, Noel, you said Hamilton-type skill set. And what he does is, if he can play nickel, then Witherspoon can play outside.
Correct.
So I don't watch the guys as much coming out of college, but you really like this guy.
Yeah, I think the thing that jumped out the most to me, obviously, like, freak athlete type guy as far as his testing. And then something that I loved from his college tape was the screen game, the way he plays through blocks. Like we talk about in today's NFL, you kind of set the edge. Like, setting the edge is kind of a thing some of your corners have to do at times in the screen game. This guy crushes blocks on the perimeter, and I think he can be a real value add for them in that kind of area of the defense.
Well, that's huge, man. You think about the edge of the defense being kind of the epicenter of this division a little bit. Like when you play San Francisco, when you play LA, it really is. It's big. And so the way you put it with the game, the way the game's changing, these guys It's no longer optional, you know. And so if you can stick the landing on him being who they think he is, like, this is going to be a fun defense. It's going to be a fun defense. Yeah. But everything for this team is going to come down to being able to play complementary football. You know, we've seen plenty of teams with good defenses around the NFL year after year that just the offenses can't get out of their own way. I thought last year, you know, the red zone turnovers were killer, like the really bad low ceiling kind of stretches for this offense where they had the games where they looked unstoppable, the sequences where they looked great, and where Geno would rip big throws and you'd be like, damn, he's as good as anybody, like the throws. Right. But then there'd be the lapses. And I can't help but think sometimes it was because, you know, they were so ambitious. They were too ambitious outside. They were too ambitious with the pass game. And whether it was the personnel or just they didn't make a decision schematically, they didn't get into the run game the way you want them to get in the run game. And they never had the balance. And when you have a bad offensive line, and I never thought I'd be saying that about a group that I thought stuck the landing a couple of years on two really good tackles. Like that's where I thought we were going. You know, right. Charles Cross kind of regressed. I think his anchor is really questionable right now. And then Abe Lucas, who was really good for them, has been hurt a lot. And I'm not saying everything is tackle play, but like when you have two guys that are that young, like we were talking about them, hey man, they've got two great corners and they've got two really, really good young tackles. Like that's a pretty good start in the NFL. And they accrued that kind of talent over a 1-2 year span, and it just hasn't materialized at tackle. And so I think the offensive line needing to play better. And we've gotten this whole preview without talking about Darnold yet. And you can kind of tell that's not what this podcast is. All right. Like everything's not about the quarterback, but I think when they see Sam Darnold at his best, they see a guy who's going to get the ball out quick. They've already talked about that. You know, JSN talking about, hey, the ball's on me when I get on my break. That's the way I like it. McDonald's talking about, I'm trying to heat you up in camp intentionally, and I love the timing. The ball's out of your hand. That's something they're talking about. And when you hear Kubiak and his quotes, and obviously he comes from New Orleans last year, the offensive coordinator down there, who did a really good job, all things considered, over some stretches, and that's why he's in Seattle, is you know, he talks about wanting to contribute to the complementary football. You ask an offensive coordinator a lot of times, like, what do you want out of this season? It's like, yeah, pew, 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 verticals, or like whatever. That wasn't even the OC. That was Gannon speaking for their offense. But, you know, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. You know, for Kubiak, the first thing that seemed to come out of his mouth most times I read his quotes was like, we want to fit in. We want to be a part of this identity that coach is building, and we don't want to fuck it up. You don't want to make it sound as simple or as like, you know, if last year was really ambitious, you don't want to make the strategy this year sound kind of like short-sighted, but it seems like trading a little bit of the high ceiling for a high floor and stabilizing. That's the word I used that kind of best describes, like, let's stabilize the situation offensively. And I think Kubiak's the right guy to do it. So when you think about Hank Fraley being their number one choice for coordinator, Hank Fraley, offensive line coach, my old teammate in Detroit. Detroit's got a little tree now, right? When you think about, like, Hank Fraley does not look like an offensive coordinator. He doesn't walk like an offensive coordinator. He's an O-line dude. And I know he had a lot to do with the run game there, right? But that just goes to show you the kind of guys they were after. And then when you go from Fraley and you say, okay, Fraley didn't work out, that's at least what I read. Kubiak's your next choice. Like, I can tell, all right, I see what we're doing here. Everybody's got to block, right? Like, everybody's got to block. The wide receivers have to block. Cooper Kupp's there. He's got to block. JSN's got to block. I think the one thing Kubiak did a really good job of, above all else, in New Orleans was cover up for a bad offensive line when things were rolling, because, like, that was a question mark. That's the question mark on this offensive line, and we'll get to them in a second. It's a question mark on this team, rather, is the offensive line. And so if you want to cover that up, I think Clint Kubiak's a pretty good guy to do that with the run game. 21 personnel. You're going to see some fullback. You're going to see 12. You're going to see tight ends. You're going to see, like, piles of tight ends on the edge. You're going to see big wings, all that stuff. All the traffic that fucks with edge players. It slows pass rushers down. You're going to see play action. You're going to see, max pro shots, like condensed formations, like a lot of eye stuff. Motion reverses off of outside zone. Like, I liked what they were getting into. And then you see the screen game with Kenneth Walker. Like, I think he's going to catch a lot of balls. He's going to have some explosive screen game kind of moments. And so, two good backs. Why not play like this with Charbonnet and Walker and Sam Darnold, who has shown when he's his best, he can turn his back to defense and run play action and take shots down the middle of the field. That's what they're going to be asking this guy to do. When he's not doing that, he's going to get the ball out. So, you don't want to see the Sam Darnold that's running for his damn life like the one against the Rams late last season. Another thing is this gives Sam Darnold a little bit of revenge opportunity, for running him out of Minnesota, because that's basically, and it wasn't really like his fault. I think everybody knew what time it was at the end of last season, losing Darisaw, losing all those guys they lost up front. The offensive line was like a turnstile. That's what they want to avoid here. Gray Zabel, because he got a great name, is being lauded for his first preseason game action the other night against the Raiders. Bradford seems to be winning the right guard spot. So, listen, there's a universe where this offensive line is a lot more stable. Mm-hmm. And I think at the center of that universe, if you ask Clint Kubiak, is the center. I mean, he has said probably one of the most important positions running a zone offense is an elite center. Now, I don't know if they have an elite center, but they got this guy Sundell, who might be Wally Pipping Oluwatimi, who came from Virginia and Michigan, and I think it's his second year in the system. But he's been hurt, and so now you've got this guy Sundell, or Sundell. I don't know how to say his name. Maybe he could. Is it Sundell?
Let's see.
Let's wait until he.
Until he tells us, like Bijan.
Yeah, like Bijan. I don't want to fuck it up. Sundell.
I'm saying Sundell.
Sundell. Okay, Sundell. Sundell is going to be an important guy in this offensive line. If you're listening to Clint Kubiak, so there's a lot that I see that I like, but this team, it's going to be all about complementary football, and that means that at times some of these new age football people might not like watching this offense play.
Right.
You got to cut them some slack. They're going to run the football. And the question is, yes, they're going to run the football, but are they going to run the football on early downs? Are they going to run the football in places where people get a little bit like, you remember how people used to get mad at Pete Carroll? And not that he was calling the offenses, but like Shoddy was the OC, and they led the league in rushing a couple years, and they had this kind of conservative mentality, and all the analytics people were pissed because this is caveman football. But I think there's enough bells and whistles and cool things coming off of Clint Kubiak's system to keep the film snobs happy. I think there's going to be some cool wrinkles that he's going to throw in that's going to make this offense a lot of fun to watch, but it's got to be under control. So there's the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Cardinals last year finished third in a very tough division. Like, it wasn't easy. And I think they got better. Dude, I know it's like glass half full season, but they got better. And they got especially better on defense. Because this is a group on offense that I think was like, you can see them going somewhere. And by somewhere, I mean improving. I don't mean like they're necessarily a playoff team, but, last year in spots you saw them stand toe-to-toe with teams. Now, like, you're going to have some nitpicky things about the quarterback, and we'll get there. But Nick Rallis, he's got some pieces. He's got something to work with. Last year, Cardinals fans know this, like, y'all's front seven, There just wasn't a lot of talent there. There weren't a lot of household names, and there certainly weren't a lot of pass rushers, especially when Gardeck got hurt. That was like kind of it. And, sometimes you got Zaven Collins rushing the passer and that sort of thing. Like it just wasn't a star-studded group. They asked a lot of – now the good news is there are some guys like Dante Stills who had to play a lot of snaps. And so your depth got better. And this is one of the things I like about this group. Like, they've got some depth. Birch, some of the guys you mentioned, Nolan, but the starting four, you've got Josh Sweat, who's got a championship pedigree, been in Philly, damn good player. You've got Calais Campbell, who everybody knows, future Hall of Famer, as a versatile 6'9" 3 technique can be. And also a great piece up front to bring some of the younger players along. You got Tomlinson, who's a good run defender. And Darius Robinson from Mizzou, who I met at the SAC Summit, who's a great dude, man. I loved hanging out with Darius Robinson. We were talking a little pass rush. So in case he goes off this year, just like, hey, give me some credit. But if he doesn't, he wasn't listening or something. No, I'm just fucking around. He's an impressive looking dude, and so they have some pieces finally. Where I mentioned the depth, they also have Baron Browning, his first full season in Arizona. I know this almost feels like a bit with me, where I'm like Baron Browning. I almost invested in Baron Browning. I did. I almost bought the whatever the fuck that was, shares of Baron Browning's career earnings.
Career future earnings.
Yeah, but there was too much fine print.
One more there, Chris, is the D tackle they grabbed in the first round, Walter Nolan. He's been dealing with, I think he's been dealing with a calf in training camp, but he should be ready to roll for the season. So, to your point, kind of a first and second wave they have there as far as the pieces up front.
You know what's so funny? I remember this Walter Nolan kid, and maybe it was the Ole Miss thing, but he kind of has like an Inkem Dichie kind of like skill set to it. And I know that Inkem Dichie, they tried to compare him to Dockett when he first came in. This is ancient history to some people. But Inkem Dichie didn't work out. Maybe this is really the second coming of Darnell Dockett or something. I don't know. I don't know enough about the kid, but I'm excited to see him play. And just the whole point is, like, this is a group that was scrappy last year with not a lot of dudes. In the secondary, they couldn't play the coverages they wanted to because they couldn't put as much as they wanted to put on the corners. Like, so sometimes instead of 3, you're playing more quarters and that sort of thing. Like, that was kind of the understanding down there in Arizona was like, hey, Gannon and Rollis, like, they're really good, but they're playing with one hand behind their back, they're coaching with one hand behind their back from a personnel standpoint and then from a scheme standpoint. So I'm really excited to see what kind of look you get out of them defensively. I mean, Davis Gaither, Mac Wilson, Bill Belichick loves Mac Wilson. That's got to count for something. Davis Gaither's been behind a couple guys in Cincinnati. Now he gets to get a bigger workload. Zaven Collins, we know about him. I like Zaven Collins. He's just a classic kind of tweener. Like, he's got a little bit of everything. But that means that he improves depth in certain areas. So Zaven Collins still there, and we love the safeties. This is a top safety group in the NFL. I don't mean the top, but a top safety group in the NFL. I don't know where you might rank them, but with Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, like, that's a good group. That's a good group right there. And Garrett Williams going to play nickel, and then you've got Melton and Will Johnson at corner, who probably gets drafted higher if he wasn't. You said he couldn't run. He didn't run that well. And he was also dinged. So I'm not really sure what to make of this team, but I'm excited to see the defense take a step forward. Because I like Jonathan Gannon. He falls into the category of coaches that we judge, books that we judge by their cover. He had some people might term it his first day on the job with the media people. Some people might call it cringe AF. That's what the young people say. I just said he was a little excited. You know, he had a couple extra cups of coffee. He wanted to pew pew shots, verticals. Rondell Moore, was that who he was telling he wanted to give him the ball deep? Was it Rondell Moore?
Yep.
Who got hurt?
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah, he did.
So that's what it comes down to. I mean, like, offensively, I see a group that could be explosive. Like Kyler Murray is, over the course of his career, kind of talked me into Kyler Murray, and then he's talked me out of Kyler Murray like a number of times. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and it's him. It's him talking me into and out of Kyler Murray. I can't blame it on anybody else at this point. Like, he has to play better. I mean, and more consistent. Because it's like that classic thing. It was like, once you show me something, I'm going to expect it out of you a lot. And the hardest thing in the NFL is to be consistent, especially for position players because of injuries and that sort of thing and scheme. But for quarterbacks, it's hard not to expect the highlight reel shit that he puts on tape sometimes with more consistency. And I think part of that is like, take the profit when you can. Not everything has to be a highlight play, right? Throw the ball away. Don't take the big sack. I love that part of his game where he kind of extends plays, but like there's a moment where you just got to know when to say when. And when they say when, and you take the deep shots, he has to be better. Cowboy, you had some stats on that.
Well, and you talked about if a quarterback shows you something you expected. In his first 3 seasons, Kyler had a 42.5 completion percentage on throws of 20-plus air yards, 14.8 yards per attempt. The last 2 seasons, 27.3 completion rate, 7.6 yards an attempt. And last year, the last 3 years, he's basically the 41st ranked quarterback in all deep stats, deep passing stats, EPA, success rates, yards per attempt, completion percentage, and accuracy. 41st out of 41.
Yeah, it's hard to figure, especially because, and part of this is I'm putting a lot on Marvin Harrison Jr., who had a quiet 900 yards. The way people are talking about him, like, you'd think he was he's left for dead for some people. But hey, there's a little patience here. It's the NFL, and not everybody like shows up their first year in the NFL and balls out. He also did some really good things last year. There were some moments where you were like, a couple of the drops and that sort of thing. You'd like to. I've heard wide receivers talk about wanting to see him be more sudden. But he's also just a big dude, man. The best thing he's going to do is go up and high point the football in traffic. And so that plays well into what I think Kyler Murray should do better. And that's be more efficient throwing the deeper passes and be more efficient taking your shots. So you've got Trey McBride, who's one of the best tight ends in the game, really emerge. Michael Wilson, good versatile player. Zay Jones, you'd like to see him kind of return to his earlier career form. But I'm excited about Paris Johnson. Frohold at center, Jonah Williams. There's a big if there. There's been injuries and variability in his play, but if he can just hold the fort down over there, Adams, Brown at guard. Certainly not the worst offensive line in the division, and I would even go as far as saying they're not the third best either. I don't know. Yep. I don't know who's number 2 or where you'd rank everybody, but the point is, like, there's not a lot on this team right now that I'm saying is prohibitive of them making the playoffs.
Right.
I'm not looking at this roster and saying, oh, fuck. Like, there are big holes here. Like, there's a couple holes, but they're holes that other teams have too. And they overcome.
I think that's a great point. Like, I think you look at this roster and you're not looking at any areas saying, how are they going to overcome this? Like we have been saying about this team in years past, specifically defensively.
That's exactly right.
I think they're set up well. And just come back to the Kyler thing, man. It's like the trickiest thing with him, like you mentioned the highlight reel plays, like in the scouting world, we talk about, like, when you're evaluating a guy, the question you're trying to answer is, who is this guy 80% of the time? Like, everybody has highlights, everybody has lowlights.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this player 80% of the time? And it's like you said it, like, sometimes he talks you into him,
mm-hmm.
sometimes he talks you out of him,
mm-hmm.
and he's just such a tricky evaluation. I'm hoping we can get that question answered this year.
Well, I think sometimes he presses. I think sometimes he presses and tries to do a little too much, and I think the great quarterbacks know when. They know when to put it all on their shoulders, and they know when to run the offense, and they know what is needed in that particular phase of the game. And I think sometimes he loses himself playing individual plays. Like, that's just to the untrained eye here, just watching him play every Sunday. There's times where I'm like, oh, that wasn't when. And if he can just get a little bit better for the feel of the game, which you expect at this point in his career. I mean, it's like year 6 or 7.
Going into year 7.
Year 7. Goodness gracious, come on. So here's the last team, and we could be reading this thing backwards next year. I don't know. Like, you just never know. That's the thing about this division and this thing about San Francisco. Last year I said before the season, and I don't have the exact quote, but something to the effect of like San Francisco is probably going to fall off a cliff this year because the attrition of playing extra games every year, making long runs, mentally, physically, and the age of some of the players, and quite frankly, it's just the law of averages. Like you can't nail it every year. And they kind of ran into a buzzsaw last year with the injuries, and certainly it challenged who they were offensively at times. And I think defensively, I remember a time when the San Francisco 49ers were scary up front with their 4. Like, early in Nick Bosa's career, they were scary up front with 4.
It's like Armstead, Buckner, right?
D Ford,
those 2 guys together. Yep.
Buckner, Armstead. And remember, they had to choose between Buckner and Armstead, and then they tried to cover up in the draft, and they didn't hit on the Kinlaw pick, and they bring in Hargrave, and they've just been kind of trying to get that front right for a little while now. So I think we're at a point in the programmatic build where it's like, has the window been open? Hell yeah, for a number of years. But I'm not a believer that the window closes all the way when you pay your quarterback. Like, there are some challenges that you have to deal with. Listen, Buffalo last year paid the quarterback, right? And I picked him to win the fucking division because I think he's a special quarterback. And I think although you looked at their offense and said, well, how are they going to do it? Or you might look at injuries on defense or what have you and say, how are they going to do it? Well, they went out and won the damn division, and they were close. I think the corner room really caught up to them, and you'd like to see Josh play better in the biggest stage there against the Chiefs. I say that to say Purdy's not Josh Allen, but he's a really fucking good quarterback. And I'm sure somebody's going to be mad about that I said he's not Josh Allen, but take the compliment. The guy, you found this guy in the 7th round. He can really play. Mm-hmm. And I love his play extension. He's, to me, he's everything that we thought that Tua could be, in a different package, right? Like,
yep.
He's got the play extension. Right, he's probably not as he doesn't make as quick decisions as Tua does in the middle of the field and early in the down, but he can be the point guard, but he can also make plays, and maybe that's the best way to say it. He's a point guard who can make plays too, and so I just to contextualize this entire breakdown, like, I don't necessarily subscribe to the belief that without Christian McCaffrey, they're a house of cards, right? Like, I don't think that's necessarily it. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to be coaching this team and in the NFL for a long time doing what he does. Like, that system predates Christian McCaffrey. That system was around before Christian McCaffrey was born. Does Christian
predates
Christian
Blondie.
McCaffrey's dad? It might predate. Yeah, it predates Blondie at the Cabaret in Atlanta. So, listen, it's one of those things where does he has he juiced that offense to the gills where it makes them scary at times? Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the pass game. Like, that's what we mostly talk about, right? What does missing Christian McCaffrey mean for them? Well, last year it meant a lot, but one of the things is you don't have, like, Jordan Mason's really good, and they traded him to the Vikings, and some games you turn on TV, and if you're oversimplistic, you're like, well, they're fine without Christian McCaffrey because Jordan Mason just ran for 140 yards. Well, to that I would say, well, can he run an angle route for 60 yards? Can you create a mismatch with him and motion him out in the slot and, pick on people? Like, no, not in the same way. And then to the people that say, like, hey, you're dead in the water if you don't have Christian McCaffrey. He's the straw that makes the entire thing go, the straw that stirs the entire drink. Like, I'd say, well, you're probably overestimating that. I think it's a combination of a great scheme and a quarterback they're very lucky to have, because they found him in the 7th round. If they'd have picked some slouch in the 7th round, this build could be dead in its tracks. Like, because they missed on the Trey Lance thing. And honestly, they've missed a lot of guys, like, over the last couple of years or in early rounds. Like, they have not drafted that well. So it kind of leads to this kind of exodus where a couple of your good players get hurt, and some games you looked at them last year, you're like, this isn't even that good a football team. Like, how is this the same football team? So, long story short, they watched 20 players leave in free agency, trade, releases. It kind of reminds me of, I'm not saying I went back and looked in 2020, like every similarity, but remember in 2020, they hit a bump in the road. 2024, they hit a bump in the road. How they respond is going to be everything. I think the next year, 21, they were 10-7. I think that's a reasonable expectation with this team, to win double-digit games. Do I think they're what they were? No. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be hell for some people when they get fully healthy. And that's a big question for me offensively, and a lot of it has to do with the wide receiver room. Like, listen, Purdy's going to be Purdy. Try not to turn the ball over. They turned the ball over 27 times last year. 5 games with 3 turnovers. That's not very good. They were 0-5 in those games. They had the long skid late in the season. Sometimes it felt like they couldn't outscore people, right? Which is weird to see their defense giving up the kind of points that they would give up in spurts. They went 1-5 in division. That's not San Francisco football. So last year was disappointing. What this team needs is they need their old guys to play young. And I'm talking about guys like this respectfully. And I have no doubts they will, because they're all Hall of Famers or borderline Hall of Famers or whatever. Trent Williams, give him a jacket right now. I think Kittle's a Hall of Famer. I think Christian McCaffrey's probably a Hall of Famer. I'm just giving out gold jackets here. Some people are going to be mad. I just need those veteran players to play young, right? Like if I'm the Niners. And by that I mean don't play in 4 games, McCaffrey. Kittle's got to be Kittle. Trent's absolutely got to be Trent. I think Trent means as much or more to this run game than McCaffrey. We've seen that in the past when Trent's out. Like, it really gets scary. And then we need the young guys, if we're San Francisco, to play like vets. So you need the old guys to play younger, and you need the vets, or rather the young guys, to play like vets. And that's a lot of if, right? I get that. And a lot of the if is on defense when you talk about the young guys. Offensively, when you have Trent up front, you can work around a lot of stuff. We like Pooney. He was there last year. Guard. You got pretty good tackle play last year. I'd say you got to get better inside. The big question mark to me is it's the wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. And it's a question because of injuries and et cetera. And I say et cetera because we'll get to Juwan Jennings in a second. But Brandon Ayuk, he tore his ACL last year after that long holdout. And he's going to start the season on PUP. When people say he'll be back week 6 or whatever it is, that's not to say he's going to be back week 6. It just means probably at least week 6, right? Right. What I mean to say is we don't know what that timeline looks like. Just because Shanahan said something about it, and level set an expectation doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be week 6. So who do you need to step up? Well, you might need Juwan Jennings to step up. And by step up, I mean just keep doing what he's been doing, which is like when he did his job interview in San Francisco, they were like, yeah, you're going to catch some balls. We love the way you block. Like you're a badass. He's like a glue guy. But they didn't tell him like you're going to get 113 targets in a year. And I think that's why, especially considering the fact that in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, for a stretch of the game, if San Francisco wins that game, he might be one of those like, oh yeah, he won Super Bowl MVP kind of guys. Juxtaposed to in 2023, I think he had 33 targets. So, like in 24, 113 targets, 23, 33 targets. That's a big difference. He signed his deal off of that 33 target season. And last year he got like number 1 receiver workload, which obviously had to do with the injuries and that sort of thing. And he played fucking big, dude. Guy's a hell of a player. I love Juwan Jennings. And that's why I think maybe this calf thing is like, shit, my calf. Like my pocket is on my calf. You know? And I deserve to be paid more. And I don't blame him. But it is a little close to that deal he signed. So it's Pearsall, really important. Obviously missed a lot of time with a gunshot wound, and that's something you don't prepare for when you draft a guy. And that hurt him last year, I think, as an offense, not being able to give him a longer run, because when he got in the game, he was pretty good. And Robinson, who came from the Rams, DeMarcus Robinson, he's a hell of a number 3, number 4 receiver. In a pinch, like having him outside, that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, I don't want to say a hell of, but like he's a good player. And now you're not going to have him for 3 or 4 games because of a suspension. Yep. Let's keep going down the line. Watkins, the rookie wide receiver, I don't know what the injury is, but he's hurt. This wide receiver room is all fucked up right now. So you're putting ankle. So you're putting a lot on Brock Purdy. You're putting a lot on the run game. Luckily, that's what they do best. And it'll be interesting to see what tweaks they do offensively, schematically, to work around this stuff if it becomes a problem the first half of the season. I think, listen, the 5 they got for the Debo trade, they got a running back out of that. They went and grabbed a running back from Oregon. Jordan James.
But he broke his finger the other day at training camp, so he's out a month. So he'll be there at the beginning of the season, but that's the training camp.
So they've got a lot of fucking problems already. Like for a team that had a lot of problems last year, they got a lot of problems right now, and it's just training camp. But offensive line returns 4 or 5. We talked about that group. But for a team that lost Greenlaw, Hufanga, Mitchell, Ward, Debo, Banks, a lot of the new players have to play well, and that's where we get the defensive side of the football. That's huge. Dude, they couldn't stop the run. Turn the ball over. We talked about it on offense. You're not going to win a lot of games if you can't stop the run and you turn the ball over, right? They weren't good enough to make those mistakes, to be deficient in those areas. And they also struggled on 3rd and long. Like 3rd and long defensively, couldn't get home, couldn't get off the field. Couldn't get to 3rd and long either. Maybe that's why they struggled, because they weren't in it long enough to get reps at it. But, like, not being able to stop the run is not a San Francisco thing, right? They got to fix that. Especially have to fix that because one of the teams that they're going to be competing with, that's all they're doing in camp right now up in Seattle. They're trying to become more physical offense. They're leaning into the run game. The Rams are going to have a run game. And if you can't stop it, they're not going to stop running the football. And so a lot like Atlanta just went out and started spending picks on defensive players to throw, water on a fire. It's kind of the same thing with San Francisco. It's kind of one of the reasons at 11 they draft Mykel Williams from Georgia, who's not thought of to be like this pass rusher, right? You think of drafting a guy in the top 15, he's got to be a pass rusher. I think he could be a good all-around player, and if Mykel Williams is that and he can kick inside on 3rd down to accommodate Bosa and Huff, who they traded for, that tells you something, that Saleh really believes in Huff. And I think also with Huff, you're going to get the best version of Bryce Huff. You couldn't get further away from that Philly market. Like you couldn't, you play in Hawaii. That's the only way. And so, like, for a guy that probably had the worst year of his football life, and I'm telling you, if somebody's going to say, well, he won a Super Bowl, I don't think you understand how embarrassing it is to make a ton of money and show up and just not be able to perform, and then you never hear from him. Like, there's a whole city that Bryce Huff's going to go down, and this is unfortunate because he's had some good years in the NFL. Is like I don't even like, what's the adjective? I don't know. You ask a Philly fan about Bryce Huff, they're going to be really negative. It's not quite to the level of like Nnamdi Asomugha, right? When they, like, you're getting this all-world player.
Team.
Yeah, like, and then he doesn't show up and play. Like, Bryce Huff was a really exciting signing for the Eagles. I was excited about it. I had it wrong. I thought he would help. He didn't help. But there's still good football in there, and he played good football. The last time he played good football was Robert Saleh. And as a pass rusher, when things aren't going well and everybody in the building is bothering you and being like, I can fix you, every corner you walk around, somebody's like, hey, try this, or like, and a lot of times, like, you just need to be left the fuck alone or just fall into a sack. He never got that opportunity last year. And so I think confidence plays into that really well. And I'm sure Saleh and the fact they went and got him was like, hey, we're gonna rescue you, man. And it's not gonna be like, hey, you're gonna come here and have to reinvent the wheel. Just get back to doing what you were doing, whatever that is. And so him and Bosa outside. If Mykel Williams can kick inside, probably TBD on who the other third down guy inside is, but I would imagine Alfred Collins, if he can rush enough, could be the guy. He certainly wouldn't be on a NASCAR package. But Alfred Collins from Texas, you talk about that. Hargrave and the other Collins left last year, and so you're replacing those two veterans with Alfred Collins and C.J. West from Indiana in the 4th round. C.J. West a little bit more of a run stopper, purely from what I hear. Right? Would you say that's accurate?
Yep.
So you've got a group that, hey, the number one thing we got to do is stop the run. So we're going to get a big edge-setting SOB from Georgia, and they're all physical, all those Georgia guys, right? And maybe we get some pass rush out of him. That'd be great. And then we're going to draft 2 big bodies inside. We're going to try to put this fire out. Nick Martin from Oklahoma State, that's an important pick for them. They got him in the 3rd. Again, I don't watch these guys play in college, but I can just tell you that when you spend a 3 on a linebacker, and especially considering the lack of – they don't have picks to throw away because they've had a hard time nailing these picks early in drafts. Like, they expect him to play, and they expect him to play next to Fred Warner at some point. And so he's competing with, Winters and those guys. Like, they need him to play. And in the secondary, they're going to miss Ward, but Lenore has really emerged. And I think Renardo Green takes a step. He started 7 games last year. Upton Stout, another young player who they expect to play nickel, right? You brought up Michael Carter, Nolan, as a guy that was really important to Saleh in New York. Like, nickel's a really important piece in the NFL in general, but for him. And so Upton Stout is going to be a guy they expect a lot out of. But, it's one of those things where you look at the defense and you say, I don't know. Like, if we're being honest, I have no idea. I'll know a little bit more once I see these guys play more. But for this team to go the places they're accustomed to trying to go, this group's going to have to play beyond its years. Does that make sense? And so, you need a lot. This is the thing with Niners. You need a lot to happen. You need the young guys to play old. You need the old guys not to get hurt, and you need them to play young. You need the wide receivers to get healthy. You need them to clear up all whatever they're dealing with, whether it's a hold-in or it's a ACL rehab or it's a suspension. I mean, damn, they got a lot of shit going on. And then Christian McCaffrey, not to say it's a house of cards if he gets hurt, but they're certainly better with him. It can't be a 4-game thing because it's almost like if you're going to get Christian McCaffrey for 4 games, I'd almost rather not get him at all. That sounds crazy, but I'd rather get the other guys in a groove. I'd rather figure out how we're going to turn the page on this thing. And I think this is probably the last year. If Christian McCaffrey plays 7 games, I think from this point forward, that's what we can expect. And we probably don't expect him to play into his mid-30s if this is the way his career is going to go. I feel for the dude because he's so damn talented. But some guys are just, they're structurally more prone to injuries, and that's something he's dealt with his whole career. And so I feel for him. It's almost like clockwork now. And we've also talked about this, like the usage. I think 2 years ago, we kind of felt like they were running him into the ground.
Well, and also running back specifically.
No question. He's approaching 30.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to be unfair to Christian McCaffrey, but I do think if this year doesn't go well, I'm not going to be sitting here next year in the preview being like, well, I expect him to get a lot out of Christian McCaffrey. This is an important year for him. I know he puts a lot into his rehab. Bijan Robinson was down there training with him, working on rehab. And, for a guy that can get involved in the pass game and that sort of thing, and he's got some really explosive cuts and good vision, like McCaffrey's a good guy for him to be spending time with. But yeah, it's just a lot that has to come together for this group. And I don't know how else to say it, man. Like, I know some people probably want me to be really – another thing, we didn't even mention Pinnock, who they grabbed from the Giants, who, he's going to play a role.
Yep.
So –
yeah, while Malik Mustafa works back, he'll be your other safety. He's started a lot of games, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, listen, it's – I believe in Robert Saleh. How quickly can he do this?
Right.
I believe in Brock Purdy. How quickly can they get their shit together around him? And one of the forgiving things is when you look at it, and I always have mixed feelings about hearing this, but like they have an easy schedule. They have the easiest schedule in the league. Well, I think that always I take that with a grain of salt because it's based on last year. And like how many of those teams, like they play the Bears and teams like that, like they play the Giants late in the season, like these teams are going to be better. I'm not saying putting the Giants and the Bears in the same category, but, pull up their schedule real quick. We got the 49ers 2025 schedule. I'm old school. I like reading the schedule in like a line, game with like, yeah, you can color code the away games, but I hate these fucking highly visual block schedules with the different colors and shit. Just give me So here we go. They're going to play Arizona, right? We talked Arizona. If you play them twice, I think Arizona might be better. They're going to be better than last year. That's a team in their division. They play Jacksonville. I expect Jacksonville to be better. They're going to play Atlanta. I expect Atlanta to possibly be better. Houston's going to be better than they were last year.
Tampa, right before Atlanta, you said Tampa, of those 2024 playoff teams, they're the ones that have made
the biggest leap in the NFC. Carolina, like, you could do this with any team, but I'm just saying, like, don't fall for the okie doke of easiest schedule in the league. And then the second thing is, and Nolan, you pointed this out, 3 home games in the first 9 weeks.
Unbelievable.
That's wild. With two
times, I couldn't believe it.
With 3 East Coast trips, a trip to Houston. You're looking. It's just
and they're only at home 5 times before their Week 14 bye.
Week 14 bye is terrible for a team with an injury history. So, yes, does everybody respect the Niners? Fuck yeah. Are they a program? Hell yeah, they are. Do they have great players? Yeah, they do. Do they need it seemingly the most things to come together? Right?
Yeah.
Like it kind of feels that way. That's not to say I'm not picking them to win the division. I don't know yet. So if you can guess, why don't you try to guess what order I'm going to put this division in just by how I broke down these rosters.
And maybe these things that San Francisco has to overcome is the reason that Kyle Shanahan has grown those gray hairs at such a significant rate since he became
No
head
question.
coach.
Are him and Raheem Morris like the same age?
I think about. He's 45. He's younger than Raheem.
He's younger than Raheem. That's the thing. When you get my age, that's why I shaved today, or at least like cut it down a little bit, because you start looking a little haggard with a little facial hair. So, anyways, I don't blame Shanahan for having a couple grades, because as good as this football team's been, for a while he was held back by quarterback play. Now I feel like they have the quarterback they want, right? And things are falling apart with the roster a little bit. So that's why this draft is so important. It's important for this year, but also the future, and because of the long stretch, the relatively long stretch right now of misses that they've had towards the front of the draft. That is the NFC West.